Hey folks, welcome back to DCS. So today we're going to be looking at the changes that came to the Mirage in the most recent open beta update. Of note, they have added TAF mode, which is a sort of GCI Datalink, which we're going to look at. And they've also changed some symbology and how the 530s work, which altogether culminate to make the Mirage even more of a force to be reckoned with than it was before. I only fly this thing on Blue Flag 80s because so far I haven't had much luck flying against stuff with Fox 3s, but against stuff that only gets Fox 1s like you do, the Mirage might just be the most capable fighter on this server. So we're up, we've got a Hornet on our RWR to hour 9, we're going to turn in, head towards it and see if we can't figure out this TAF system. Okay, so to use TAF, you basically have to change your red radio, which is the one underneath your gear lever, to the second on position. So not the first to turn it on, you have to click it again to the next position. I'm just going to turn my radio volumes up there. You then get to choose the channel you want to put it on, and the channels can be found on the kneeboard. You can input them down here with the green light, and then you just have to press TAF on the panel to the left of your radar screen. But first I'm going to switch it to channel 2 because that's for the radar station at Beslan, which is where we took off from. And after hitting TAF you'll see that it's given as a target already. Now the info across the top of the radar screen is exactly the same as for any other lock that you might find. So this target is travelling at 0.5 Mach at 15,000 feet. That tells me that it's a tanker or a big thing that I just don't really need to worry about. So I'm kind of disregarding it at this point. But shortly it will actually change as a target gets closer to the radar station. The downside of this system is that it can only show the closest target to the radar station you have selected. So there it's just updated, and now the target is travelling at 0.9 Mach at 28,500 feet. So that's far more likely to be our Hornet that we've got on RWR. So after a bit of time we've closed in, we've climbed up a bit, or we are climbing up a bit. I was waiting until I was a bit underneath him so I could get underneath his radar cone. And right here I actually spot a contrail. I'm really not sure what this guy was doing up here, but as you've seen, it shows that TAF is quite fine at directing you towards stuff and intercepting it, and it actually works without your radar even being on, so you can flick it into silent mode. And as long as the symbology is solid yellow and not dashed, you will get live real-time updates on the target's position. So you could quite happily, especially if it's high up like this, fly right up to it, acquire it visually and close to within Fox 2 range before you engage. You don't need to use your radar at all. Or like I'm doing here, because it's a cold aspect target, it's actually quite tricky to pick up on radar. But I'm attempting to get a radar lock so that I can just fire a Fox 1 at him from behind. I completely have the drop on him at this point. So I'm hoping that launching will force him defensive and let me close the gap. Just struggling to actually get a lock. The Mirage's radar still is not very good on cold aspect targets, since you can only fire a weapon in high pulse repetition frequency, which is obviously best used on targets that are closing on you, not extending away. But we should be able to chase down a Hornet fairly easily. Looks like he's slowly turning around, so as his aspect changes we pick him up. And here we get the new symbology. I actually hard locked him because we're within launch parameters. And now, as you'll see on the bottom of the screen, you get a G and a D for left and right missiles, and they actually have a countdown now which tells you how long until impact, which is new, it wasn't there before. So we've got 12 seconds till impact. I actually completely forgot that that was there. So I'm just going by the usual amount of time I'd expect it to take, and I actually fire again before the missile impacts, and it actually gets him. So That was a very long shot for a 530 and it connected. Right now you'll see it says M in the middle, and the box is no longer tracking the rack. This is a new symbology thing as well, where the radar, when it loses lock, it will guess based on the bearing and speed of the target where it's going to be, and it will try and reacquire the lock. I think it tries to reacquire for 8 seconds, and if it does, then the missile will continue to track. If it doesn't, then you'll get an ILLUM symbology and a circle. If you manually place a target within that circle, then it will continue to guide on the beam without you even needing a solid track. So the radar changes have been a massive boost to the Mirage's lethality, because prior to this, if a target went 90 degrees aspect, it would notch you by accident. They didn't even have to try. They could literally turn cold, and as they passed through the 90 degree, it would lose the lock. So prior to this update, all they had to do was turn around for a bit, like literally just go past 90 degrees and turn back in, and they'd have defeated your missile. That's not going to happen anymore. So here's another Mirage that we tracked, and another thing they've changed, they've actually changed the trigger system, and prior to this you used to be able to launch from TWS lock and it would automatically change it to a solid lock. You now have to change it to a solid lock manually and wait for the missile launch tone, which sounds just like when you get a launch tone for the Magics. You're hearing it now. If you don't hear that, you can't fire, and if you don't hear that, it's more than likely because you're locked in TWS and not STT. So remember to solid lock the target if you want to fire on it, because I nearly died a few times because I didn't realise this. I've been perusing the manual since, and we splash it. Nice, moving on. Right, so next port of call, the Gunsight has also been changed, and part of it is why they've changed the trigger system. It's now a 2-stage trigger. The first stage is basically just to sort of add a visual HUD tracer thing, which is basically useless. I would actually advise against bothering with binding the first stage. It seems to be very worthless. And the second stage is to fire, and that's to fire any weapon you have selected. So we're closing in on an AI Phantom. They are usually in pairs. I think this one might be on its own, but I thought to myself, I'll fire long with a 530 to see if the improvements to the 530s have given them any extra reach. And if it misses, I'll go for a gun kill. So I'm just trying to avoid being killed by a SAM at the minute. But we are still closing in on this Phantom, and I'm going to purposely fire at it when we're a little bit too far away. And going back to an earlier point, you'll hear that we have the launch tone, despite being well outside of the maximum range of the missile, and that's because I manually switched it to a solid lock. It's an AI, so I really don't have to worry about it trying to run away or anything, because they're just going to fly straight at me and shoot at me anyway. So we fired at about 13-14 miles. You can see the missile tracking there. One second to the impact. So the missile missed. It should have impacted there, but it didn't. And you'll see just then it flashed M on the symbology because it lost him for a second, but reacquired him immediately. I've switched over to Magics now. You'll actually see a splash on the ground behind him. Or maybe not. There it is. So the missile was actually still tracking him for quite a while. And now we are in the merge. So let's try and get guns on this Phantom and see what kind of changes have been made to the Gunsight. In terms of how it looks and how it works, it's functionally identical. It just updates a little better, and the gun snake isn't quite as much of a squiggly mess. It's just all a bit smoother and easier to line up, but it's still not a pleasant gun sight to use. And before anyone says anything in the comments, I would not dogfight a player like this. but because it's a Phantom and because it's AI, I'm not really particularly concerned about it getting one over on me. So I'm just basically pointing the nose at it to try and test the guns out better, see what their range is like and that kind of thing. I guess if I played it properly, then I probably would have already got a gun solution by now, but that's neither here nor there. Slowly roping him in. And at this point I am actually applying some actual fighty player stuff to get behind him by diving a little bit more than I would otherwise, just to get the speed back and that kind of thing. And here we should be able to get guns on. So the gun snake does actually sort of follow a more logical line than I feel that it used to. But it still twitches around a bit too much, and I feel like I'm having to anticipate where it's going to be rather than it telling me where to be, which is really the biggest problem with it. But we did get hits on the first attempt. When you're shooting at a full silhouette, it's a fucking shitload easier than trying to, you know, in their close range like this, or they're flying in a straight line and behind them, or it's just doing lazy maneuvers. It's actually harder to hit targets under those circumstances than it is to just shoot at them when you've got the full profile to shoot at. In situations like this, I actually feel like I'd probably have more luck trying to hit them if I didn't have the radar Gunsight. So I might actually bind a key to use the backup one. But we get locked by a Hornet, so we're gonna get the fuck out of there. I'm gonna just assume that Phantom's gonna die anyway, because it was pretty messed up. But let's run away, live another day. Okay, so a little later on, I get the Hornet on RWR again after breaking contact. This is probably about 2 minutes later. So I turn hot and I see a mess of things on the radar, and there's also some Phantoms on the RWR, so I'm guessing that there's 2 Phantoms here and a Hornet. Possibly 2 Hornets. I think there is 2 Hornets. It's open ground and I'm pushing straight towards Sochi, so this is probably not going to end very well for me. And this Hornet is actually locking me up. He has a bit of a range advantage with Sparrows, so rather than continue pushing into a gaggle of 4 targets, I decided to break contact and push for the mines. Now the beauty of the Mirage's radar system, and this was true before the update, is that it will remember where your target was, and it will show you on the radar screen the memory of your last lock. But it only happens if you break the lock by the gimbal limit. If you just drop the lock on purpose, it won't show. Anyway, so rather than continuing on the way he saw me go, I double back, and I'm going to push back straight out the way I came, hoping he's not expecting that. I was shitting it a bit here because I thought he'd already got there and he was locking me, but it's actually a ship that's locking me, so he didn't magically catch up and turn the corner that quickly. But as you can see on the radar display, we've got the bearing of his last known position. Just getting a little bit lower in case they come around and catch me with their radar by accident. And I'm just going to point straight at him with vertical scan because he should be well within 10 miles by now, or very close to. And I'm just pointing at his last known position. And I managed to catch one with a magic seeker and another one with the radar. So the one that I'm locking with the radar is flying off to the left somewhere. This one with the magic seeker, I think it might be a Phantom because I check RWR in a second and there's no Hornets in that direction, just 2 Phantoms. So they're AI, I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to turn left to follow the track for the guy that I just picked up by chance. And that shows that he's flying off into the mountains, so we whack the burner on. See if we can't get after him. Got magic selected and vertical scan. So engage vertical scan flail, and the magic's game again. And this is where the new HUD symbology is really worth its weight in gold, because it remembers his bearing and his trajectory, and it continues with it. And it's hard to see, it'll probably be impossible to see on YouTube, but he actually turned left just as he went over this ridge. I actually didn't see it at the time, but I saw it on the footage. So I know roughly where he went. I'm just going to keep flying straight and just do some vertical scan flails. But the fact that the HUD maintained where he was when I lost sight of him meant that I had a box to follow, and it's much easier to orientate yourself and maintain situational awareness when you have these kinds of aids. So he must have turned left and then turned back into the right, because I actually managed to pick him up here by rolling vertical scan. And because you lock in TWS, he doesn't know. He must see the launch. He actually starts flaring here, but it's too late. So that was only the highlights from the first 2 flights that I had since the update. I've flown a few times more since then with a wingman. TAF is actually ludicrously overpowered when you're flying on a not very populated server, because it will just, it seems to track through mountains. It doesn't give a shit about obstacles, and I'm quite sure it actually managed to track me onto a missile. It was very confusing at the time, but I do have the footage, so I'm probably going to put that into another video. But I hope you enjoyed this one, folks. I hope that I gave you some nice little looks into what kind of difference the changes make into an actual multiplayer environment. And if you want to see more, then obviously be sure to subscribe and like and all that good stuff. Quite happy with that landing, considering the crosswind. But yeah, that's it for today, folks. Thanks a lot for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.